Welcome to Just Off Harbor. Today's episode, we are going to be talking all about the Disneyland calendar and what you can expect in the coming year. We're hoping that this will help you be able to decide what time of year makes the most sense for you and your family, maybe based on what your interests are, or what your preference in weather is, or what your crowd preferences are. And we're going to try to help sort of guide you through how to weigh the pros and cons of each month so that you can make the best decision for you.
Yeah, I think we want to talk about more like events and things that are happening and weather and practical stuff like that. But we're also going to follow this episode up with an episode about budgeting and planning for your trip based on how expensive it is to travel at each of these different times, because different seasons can vary on your trip. There can be ticket deals or there can be better prices on hotels. And so all those things we want to go over so you can plan for a budget in the next episode. But this one, we just kind of want to help you get excited for a certain season or a certain event or an after dark party or whatever thing that you may find that sounds fun to you and your family. That's kind of what we want to go over on this episode.
Right. So if you've been to Disneyland before, maybe you already have a favorite time that you like to go. Some people love to go at Christmas. Other people really enjoy the Halloween season. Some people like to go in the spring when the weather's really nice and the pink blossoms are on the trees. So everyone has their thing. My personal favorite time, I think, is Halloween. It's just the most festive and fun. So I feel like if you're gonna choose a season and you're into Halloween, it feels the most special. You're going to have the most decor and like unique events. It's when Oogie Boogie Bash is happening. There's more unique characters out. The weather it's not usually rainy or anything like that. It's usually quite warm. But I prefer Halloween. What's your favorite season?
I really love Halloween. The biggest thing about Halloween is you're going to run into a few more crowds. And also if it's your once in a lifetime Disneyland trip, I often will suggest more of a off-season or early spring or a seasonal time, a non-seasonal time when you can experience Disneyland as it's just like
classic
yeah, meant to be.
Tip.
So just kind of depends on your preference and what your plans are for Disney for the next 10 years.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So.
Okay, so we're just going to start with January and move our way through. Maybe take a few notes if you're kind of trying to make decisions for yourself based on some of these events that we bring up. And we're also going to try to sort of go over things like basic weather expectations during these periods of time and crowd calendars, as well as things like refurbishments, things you can expect in terms of maybe less access to shows or less access to like a more open calendar schedule. And so you can sort of make those calls. It's quite nuanced. Like you don't realize, and a lot of times people will make a decision and decide I'm going on a trip during X season, and they don't realize that maybe fireworks are only on the weekends or whatever. And so we're wanting to try to prep you for those things so that you can kind of isolate the most important parts for yourself, because everyone's different.
And we have been to Disneyland quite a bit over the last couple of years. We have been in the parks every month of the year over the last couple of years. There's not a single month that we haven't experienced in the park recently. So I think we have a pretty good handle on what you can expect for all of those. So I think we should just start with January.
Dive in. Okay. So January. The pros of January are if you go during the first week, you will get to benefit from the tail end of the Christmas season. So if seeing Christmas is important to you, but December feels crowded or expensive, or it's a hard month to travel, you can always try to hit that first week in January and still kind of get that Christmas vibe. So we recommend that for people that maybe still want to take advantage of the end of their Christmas break. So
it's also a great one to give as a gift for Christmas, because you can give it, but you don't have to wait for very long.
Yeah.
Like your kids can, like, you're like, we're going next week, you know, like it's a little more exciting as far as like, you know, a gift situation, and it's still festive. Right.
So that first week, like I looked up the calendar, this year it's through the 6th. You can expect all the same Christmas celebrations that you can get any other time of year. other than Santa Claus. Santa Claus stops after Christmas, but they do bring in Santa Goofy, because I think the idea is like, well, Santa's gone back to the North Pole, and they don't want to confuse kids and stuff by having it afterwards. So they have Goofy dressed as Santa, and that's kind of a fun, different thing. But everything else about the holiday season, the parade, the fireworks, the snacks, the special holiday atmosphere, that will remain. The tree stays up, all of those things. So that's a great week to go. Once you get past the 6th, you will still get to benefit from a certain amount of decor and things like that. Like Small World Holiday will remain up through, it's still on the calendar through the 15th. And I think we've heard it might be through even toward the end of January. So you can still hit Small World Holiday, but after that 6th, I think is when Haunted Mansion goes down to change back to its regular non-overlaid state. So you will start to see a little bit kind of pulled away after that week.
That's typical for every year. You know, I mean, like, we're giving kind of dates for this year, but you can expect like that first week is still Christmas. The second week is still technically holiday season, typically.
They just start to kind of peel the layers away.
You start to lose some of things, the entertainment. Like this year, for instance, it's going from the Christmas fireworks to just like the standard Mickey Mix Magic projections. Like, there's just things that slowly start to trickle away, and then by like the third week in January, it's all gone. It's gone. It's back to normal Disneyland with no decorations, no anything really specific.
Right.
So it's just something to keep in mind, and that's also when you start seeing refurbs. So January, this is why it's a little bit cheaper to go at this time of year. Is there are always scheduled refurbs in January. Like, it's just a good time for Disneyland to put some things down. So if this is your once in a lifetime trip, maybe that's not a great time for you to go because you don't want to miss out on certain things. But also, if you don't really care about missing out on certain things and more of a budget is important, then it's a really great time to go. And also, if like entertainment's not really your thing, if you're literally just like, I want to go ride rides and be in Disneyland without the crowds, January is great. So
yep, you can expect as you're heading from January, and really January through early April, you're getting into kind of rainy season at Disneyland. So you do kind of have to anticipate that maybe the weather isn't as lovely as it might be if you go at spring break. But you're sacrificing some of those things for, like Britton said, maybe lower crowds, maybe cheaper tickets, cheaper hotels, cheaper flights. So you just kind of have to weigh all of that. As you get into the second half of January, Lunar New Year starts at Disneyland, which is a really fun celebration. It's mostly in DCA. They have it kind of down in that Paradise Gardens area. There's lots of just sort of Lunar New Year activities. They have sort of a cavalcade parade that comes through every day.
And you get to see like Mulan and Mushu, like some of these like kind
more
of
rare
characters, and also celebrate the culture of the Chinese New Year. And it's just kind of a fun. They have food marketplace things with a festive food that matches, and it's a fun way to like get to have something going on in the park, but it doesn't get quite as crazy.
No, like it's fun because it's something different, but it doesn't draw the same sort of crowds as something like Food and Wine Festival does, for instance. And so you get to benefit from a unique thing without feeling like you're dealing with the event aspect that some of the stuff further in the year brings. So that runs from toward the end of January. They haven't announced exact dates yet, which, like we said, we're trying to actually stay away from exact dates in this because we want this to be something you can reference generally, not just for the 2025 year, but for just the sake of giving examples. You're going to expect probably the end of January, maybe like the 20th-ish onward. And that ends, it goes about
like
a month.
Mid-February-ish or so, toward the end of, maybe the 20th-ish of February. So it's a great season to go. Is there anything else specifically about January that we feel like we should mention?
All I wrote. You mentioned less entertainment. Like you're probably there's not going to be parades once the Christmas season ends.
Fireworks are only on weekends. I mean, they'll do projections on the castle. They do that all the time. But like Fantasmic's going to only be on weekends. Fireworks are only going to be on weekends. So that sort of stuff. And you also risk things like refurbs. Sometimes they do random refurbs of World of Color, or they do refurbs of like there's just things. So if that part isn't as important to you, it's a great time to just go experience the park as
And just take it for what it is, what's there, and accept, like, you just have to go in January with sort of accepting that you get what you get. And it's still great.
The only other thing I wanted to mention about January is Disneyland typically will run a ticket deal of some sort, whether it's right now, like this year and last year, they did kids at $50 a day for between January, certain days in January and up to through like mid-March. This year it's like January 7th through March 20th. So it varies a little bit, but it's also a really good time to go because you've got additional things like discounted tickets.
And those tickets, that can make a huge difference.
Huge.
I mean, when we've been quoting people out, that will take sometimes $200 off of each kid.
Well, a typical 3-day ticket for a kid is over $300, and now you're looking at $150 for a 3-day ticket. So depending on how many little kids you have in that 3 to 9 range, it can really make a difference to your budget.
Which, in addition, especially if you're dealing with little kids, refurb season, kids don't care about refurb season. They are not riding Indiana Jones or Big Thunder Mountain or, you know, whatever, some of those bigger rides that tend to sort of get their overhauls. They want to go on all the Fantasyland rides, and they want to meet some characters, and they want to eat a churro, and they go to bed
and
at
not be
8,
overwhelmed by crowds.
It's really a good time to take families with small kids because you aren't fighting those crowds and you are benefiting from lower prices and just an easier. It's just easier.
Yeah, for sure.
So definitely take that into consideration. And that ticket deal is so good.
They also have currently, like they often do like Disneyland hotel rates and stuff, like extra percents on property rates. So it's a good time to be like, well, maybe we're saving money on tickets. We're going to spend a little bit more and also get a discounted rate on property option or different things like that. So you just have these opportunities kind of open up to you if you are on a budget. In the first January, February window.
Well, and that's why we said we wanted to go through this month by month, and I said to take notes because it can feel really convoluted, like, wow, that's a lot of information, but really it's bullet points. You're talking about January has these pros and these cons, and every month is going to have kind of that sort of situation.
Every single month has pros and cons.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single month that's like, this is the magical month.
Yeah, for real.
There's things about each one. So we just want to point those things out to you so you can plan ahead a little bit.
Right. Okay. So moving into February, we're dealing, like we said, you have Lunar New Year still through the majority of February. And they also last year started a newer program called Celebrate Gospel. It's sort of for Black History Month. They had, I believe, we weren't there exactly for that stretch of time, but they had some shows in DCA that were particularly focused on celebrating Black History Month. I think they had some food
live
items.
Entertainment of all different types of music and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of, again, Disney is good at making sure that there's little some amount of festival or entertainment happening in
pretty continuously,
pretty much all the time. So you're going to find things at certain times of year that you won't find any other time of year. So February is great for that. They have Sweethearts Night in several Sweethearts Nights the first couple weeks of February. So if you're looking for a couples trip, it's a great time to go. Especially because February, would you say it's probably the rainiest month?
In our experience. I feel like that's been
February feels like the rainiest month. So taking little kids through February can have a little bit of a struggle because of just dealing with wet stuff. But when you're just doing an adult trip, staying dry in Disneyland is not hard on your own, really, overall.
It's really when you've got a stroller and little kids that won't keep their little ponchos on and everything's dragging and everyone's stomping in puddles and stuff. That's when it gets dicey. We've been on plenty of trips, just the two of us, or with my husband and stuff, where it's been raining. And yeah, it's a little some people love it. I have a little bit of a hard time with it because I'm very type A. I like all my things to be clean and dry and how I want them. And I don't want things getting ruined. And it makes me I have anxiety about it.
Yeah.
More than ever actually getting too wet. I have anxiety about getting wet. So,
because we're really good at actually staying dry overall.
Yeah, we've never been just miserably wet. No. Even on the wettest days that we've been there, I don't feel like we've ever been we can't handle this.
No.
But if I had my little kids with, I would be a wreck. And it's, again, my own anxiety more than anything. But yeah.
Well, and even then, so our very first trip with my kids, our very first day in the parks was the wettest day I've ever seen in Disneyland ever since. Like, it was like, they were like sweeping puddles into the gutters that like we were walking, like our shoes were soaked in 5 minutes. We didn't really plan.
I wouldn't do well.
We didn't really plan well for it. We didn't have like a stroller cover. Like there were things. We were not prepared, but it's, even though if you do get wet, it's not necessarily cold. Yeah. Like our kids were like 2 and 4 and they were soaked and they did not care. Like, they actually probably cared less than we did that they were wet. So, you know, again, we talk about, like, that it's really wet or whatever, but you can still have a really good time in the park when it's raining. And low crowds, like, locals don't come out when it's raining. They don't need to. They can go any other time. You can walk on pretty much.
You do, one thing you do deal with a really rainy day is a lot of outdoor rides, like anything with an outdoor track closes. So because that's just the safety thing. So like Radiator Springs Racers will be down. Several of the Fantasyland rides, like Alice in Wonderland and the Teacups and I don't know, maybe Storybook. Some of those like that.
Matterhorn, for instance, is open in the pouring rain. So some of the
not hurt.
Some of the rides really aren't always as affected by that, and some, almost like any amount of rain, they're like immediately shut down. So again, it's a very much a flexible trip. It's an adult trip or a kids don't care trip, but again, super budget friendly. This, you know, the kids ticket deal is happening through February. You can plan a couple sweethearts night in February, and it's just. It's not a bad not a bad time to go. It's a
fine time to go. Like I feel like if someone said what month do you recommend, I would definitely not say February off the top of my lips. Like go in February, but for its purpose, or if that's the month that works for you, like there's no reason to not. Yeah, you won't not have a good time. It's just,
and sometimes you may be perfectly dry all week.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
so definitely. you never really know.
Heading into March, this is actually one of my favorite times of the year to go. And even though I am not a foodie, like that is not my thing. Ask anyone. I was just talking to her earlier about how I have like 6 snacks at Disney that I want to get every time, and that's like kind of all I care about. I'm not the Food and Wine Festival person, but I really enjoy Food and Wine Festival. I mean, I like a little snacky as much as the next person, and they've got lots of fun. Like they've got the Snickers macaron. I mean, that alone is like a reason to go. But on top of that, what I actually love about March is, and Food and Wine Festival, is my kids love it. There's lots of activities. They have cute little shows. There's coloring opportunities. They like trying the little snackies. And in general, I have always had good luck with weather in March. Like it's jacket weather. It can rain, but
I will say that trip that I said that was the most rainy
was in March.
It was in March.
It was
early March. It was like the 5th or something. But I mean, you know, it's not impossible to not have rain.
But I've probably been in March, with my kids 3 or 4 times now, and I don't know that we've ever had rain in March.
And we all, to be fair, we had rain literally that one day, and then it was beautiful. So, like, you know.
So the other thing about March is beautiful flowers. The trees are beautiful. Like Disneyland,
even if you don't get the full like pink blossom part, Disney in general is blooming.
The baby ducks are out.
The baby ducks are out. Like they also had the last couple of years have put Minnie Mouse on the front of the train station instead of Mickey Mouse for Women's History Month.
Love that.
Which I'm always like, just
great
cute little feeling in my heart for that.
Yeah. So I actually really appreciate what March has to offer in general. I feel like my kids always look like, you can choose cute outfits for your kids. The pictures that you take always look really pretty and bright.
It's still like sweater weather, like sweater and leggings and maybe a jacket at night or something. Like it still can be cool, but you're not going to freeze. And
I would always rather be cold over hot in general. Like I would rather, because you can remedy cold. You can take layers off, or add more layers and feel good. You can only take so many layers off, and so sometimes the hotter months feel so like suffocating to me because I'm like, there's nothing. I'm just hot. I'm just sweating everywhere. This is just me. And so I sort of enjoy the little chillier side because I feel like, again, it's my type A. Like I want to control everything thing. Yeah. So I like feeling a little bit more like I can control my own comfort. That's a weird thing, but
I mean, it's fair. But Food and Wine in general will usually starts like the very first weekend in March and runs through all of March.
It's usually
maybe,
pretty much all
April
of March.
A little bit. I feel like it's more like 5 or 6 weeks, but I could be a little.
I should have looked at last year's schedule, but yeah, I think you're right.
But they also have, the last few years, brought back Soarin' over California instead of Soarin' over the world. So people that like that nostalgic Soarin' over California, you get the orange grove smell and evergreens and all of that. That's kind of if that's something like, I haven't seen that in so long, I want to do that. That's kind of a fun reason to go in March as well.
I'm actually thinking that Food and Wine goes through most of April, because remember last year with our retreat,
and we had
I sort of
barely
think
missed it,
we barely missed it with our retreat being at like the very end of April. So I think it kind of runs, like you said, maybe like 6-ish weeks. So you can sort of plan on that. So if you have an early April trip, you're definitely going to hit it then too.
Yeah. But March is, so if you're looking for crowd-wise, the earlier in March, the better. If you can go that like the 1st through the 10th, I would say you're pretty still in like off season. Once you hit about the 10th, that's when spring breaks start happening all around the world. And everybody starts kind of descending on the park to experience Food and Wine and spring break sort of stuff. So you can expect spring break for a solid month, like March 10th through probably about April 20th.
Well, I feel like the first side of that is usually like local spring breaks a little bit more, and then the second half is more like tourist spring breaks. Not that it really makes a huge difference, other than I do feel like in March, because locals tend to be a little bit less gung-ho,
like come for the day and go home.
that you still have a little bit quieter mornings and quieter evenings, because people aren't like start to finishing it, and you get into that real heavy spring
Like
break
first
week
week of
in
April.
like the first couple weeks of April, and it's like diehard vacationers who are getting every hour out of the park. So I have still felt like, even though it's technically spring break season, March is a better time to hit it than April if you're looking for low crowds.
There's something that happens towards the end of March, early April, where you start having more entertainment start showing up. They tend to have a few more availability for even like weekday fireworks sometimes, or more weekday phantasmics or different. Like, I feel like there's just like little windows where there's opportunities for more entertainment, where January, February, March, you get fireworks on the weekend. That is it. You get projections, but you don't, and same with Phantasmic. You only get it on the weekends, because Anaheim has sound ordinances with the city, or Disneyland has sound ordinances with Anaheim that they can't be running fireworks during the school week. So, and they get little breaks here and there for like Christmas. They can do it longer. I think for spring breaks
part of
and
Halloween
stuff like that.
and
Some
stuff.
parts of Halloween. But they cannot do fireworks. Plus, because of the weather, you have more chances where it gets canceled.
Yeah,
and stuff.
because they put those wind balloons up, and you can be waiting for an hour or longer for fireworks, and they don't tell you a thing until they
Like,
put up that
right
last
before.
balloon, and then they're like, "Sorry."
So again, like if things like fireworks are important, waiting till like later spring, you have higher chances of things going the way you want them to.
Yep. And again, this is one of those situations where you're weighing the pros and cons between, do I get everything on my wish list, or do I get to enjoy less things on my wish list with less crowds or less money or whatever. And so it's because I can't think of a time of year that I've gone where I've been like, that trip wasn't good. That trip wasn't fun.
No.
That trip didn't have enough to offer. You can't do everything at Disneyland no matter what. If you stay there I've been there sometimes for 8 or 9 days at a time and still could have done more things. And so even if a handful of things are not offered when you're there, you're not going to do everything else anyway. So it's just really wrapping your head around it and going prepared so that you're not disappointed. That's the real issue.
And picking out the handful of things that are the very most important to you, whether it's budget, entertainment, ride closures, weather, seasonal offerings. Just pick out those handful of things and
hone in on
it and plan on it. Because the hardest part for me a lot of times is just deciding on like dates. So,
well, and we'll have people message us that are like, I want to go sometime in March or April. Can you give me a quote? And we're like,
not really,
because there's so many variables in that. Like, do you want to be there for Food and Wine? Do you want to be there over spring break crowds? Is this
are you trying to get
the
kids ticket deal in early March instead of, there's so many pieces.
So you do kind of have to make that date decision. And that is really the only major decision you have to make in all of this is really what those dates are going to be. And realize too that, for instance, maybe you get more time off of work by going over the weekend, but also maybe it's a little cheaper if you could go like midweek, Monday through Thursday, and maybe kind of pondering through all those pieces, which we as travel agents can help you with too. Yeah. So if this feels hugely overwhelming, you come to us after this episode and you say, I think it sounded like maybe I want to go in April. Help me. And we'll help you. Because I know that this can feel like a lot.
Food and wine sounds really, really important to me.
Yeah.
But it's 6 to 8 weeks worth of time. When in there should I go? We can narrow that down for you. We can help you figure it out. So
don't panic.
Don't panic. I know it sounds like a lot.
We always do this. We're like, let's not scare them. I know. And then we get on and we're like scaring people. So sorry.
No,
we'll rein it in. So that's April. Oh, also Season of the Force. Usually, I mean, the last couple years they've done this. They did it pre-COVID. I think up until about 2018, it was a thing that was happening. And then they didn't for a little bit, but then it's back again. So it's basically mid-April, they sort of do like a Star Wars focused celebration. They have like different food at some of the, especially places like Galactic Grill and some of those more like Tomorrowland areas. You can get desserts that are themed a little bit more like Star Wars. Hyperspace Mountain tends to come back, which is actually totally my favorite.
Love Hyperspace.
So if you're into Hyperspace Mountain, that's a great time to go. If you're a Star Wars fan, they also have like little activities. My kids did a scavenger hunt while we were there that they really liked, where you went to Galaxy's Edge and found all these different things, and then you got a little like trading card and stuff. So there's things to do. If you're a Star Wars fan, that's a fun time. And then as you head into later April, they start to offer Star Wars nights, at least historically the last few years, where it's very Star Wars focused. They've got like really rare Star Wars characters out and Star Wars food offerings, and everyone dresses in Star Wars character outfits and brings their lightsabers, and it's a whole thing. So if you're a Star Wars person, maybe that's a great thing to plan your trip around a little bit.
For sure. That's most of, I mean, we've kind of combined March and April in a lot of ways because it's kind of the same season, that spring break and Star Wars season. If you're picking, again, any part of, if you're like, I don't care if it's March or April, I'd go like beginning, and you're worried about crowds, beginning of March or end of April. Like that middle part's going to be the most like crowded and busy and spring break stuff. But if you can hit those end weeks, you'll do pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then, this is technically May, but as you head into May, on May the 4th, they tend to do, again, related to the Star Wars stuff, sort of a culmination of the Star Wars things on May the 4th for May the 4th be with you. So, that's a priority for a lot of Star Wars fans. It's a great week to be there. I kind of think maybe that's on like a Sunday or a Monday this year. So just think about that. And then as we're heading into May, you start to have grad nights. This is another thing that people panic about because they hear that there's grad nights and they're like, and how will this affect my
like
trip?
Every 2 or 3 days. So there's not even really great ways to like avoid the grad nights if you're going in May or June.
Yeah.
Because they're all the time.
Yeah. But you really don't need to panic about it, because the thing is, so a grad night is essentially a time when Disneyland offers graduates, like high school graduates, a ticket at a lower rate that gets them in for a day in the park. Well, there's different ones, but gets them in for a day in the park. And then they have sort of a nighttime celebration that's sort of a private event in DCA that's just for graduates. So people kind of freak out because they feel like the crowd, the parks get like, it's descended on by youth. And
which, to be fair,
it kind of is, but also
in the evening.
We've been there during grad nights, and I don't feel like I've ever felt, I mean, you notice groups of teens around, but there's enough security and there's enough, like, I don't know. I've never felt like anyone was obnoxious or disrespectful. I never experienced really anything too awful with grad nights. And so don't let it ruin your, like, don't panic. I actually did write down when the grad nights are. They start May 9th this year. And like Britton said, they're pretty much like every 3 to 5 days through May and June up until June 13th. So May 9th to June 13th this coming year. And that's pretty typical, mid-May to mid-June. But basically, if you are really worried about that, you can plan to get park hoppers, because then as the youth start descending into DCA for the mix-in time, you can hop to Disneyland. It's sort of like with the Oogie Boogie thing we've talked about, where as the mix-in starts happening, you want to move. And if you don't have a hopper, you're just kind of like have nowhere to go. So that is something to consider with that. But just generally, I feel like on a lot of the boards, people are like, I scheduled my trip over a grad night. Now I don't know what to do. And the answer is nothing. You can't do anything about it. And it's not the end of the world. So
on the other hand,
don't stress.
If you do have a grad, it's actually a really fun thing to get to go have your graduation trip at Disneyland. You can take a couple of like, this isn't chaperones. I was going to say chauffeurs, and I knew that was not the right word.
I could see your brain trying to work really hard. I was like, what is she going?
Take a couple of chaperones, take your kid and their friends, go do the grad night. Like, it's actually a lot of people that we didn't ever do grad nights when we were kids, but people that have done grad nights always look back on them very fondly, that they were like such a fun, like, get to go and have a trip and be with your friends and all those sorts of things. So if you are looking into a gift for your grad of some sort, planning a trip around your grad nights and booking grad night tickets and stuff is all something that could be a fun trip to plan for that time of year as well.
Yep.
So that's May.
And again, into
back
June.
To weather a little bit. May is great. Like,
yeah, May is actually a beautiful month to go.
It's always really comfortable. Maybe like Spirit jersey at night, but you can still wear shorts. Like, it's not super cold.
It hardly ever rains.
It doesn't get overly hot during the day usually. But this year, I'm guessing though, I think our guess is like May 16th. This is not an announcement coming from anywhere official. We've heard nothing. Based on what we've seen and heard and ticket deals that are happening and things, that's our guess. Feels like the Disneyland 70th drop to us.
May 16th is a Friday. The SoCal resident ticket deal that they just announced goes through May 15th. And that's why we think we already were of the understanding that it was probably happening in May.
Mid-May-ish.
And this has solidified our timing for us. So if going for the 70th, which we still don't have any details on in terms of like what's happening, we've heard hints that Paint the Night could come back, which is the parade, the nighttime light parade, sort of like electrical light parade, but like reimagined.
And I'm guessing they will have, there will be fireworks and parades
and food offerings and merch and
characters maybe in special clothes and maybe some special decor on the castle, like all those sorts of things that come with year anniversaries.
Like how they had the Disney 100. If you went during the Disney 100 last year, especially at the beginning when it was a little bit more like just opening, you got a lot of those foods and merch and, getting to see the characters brand new. They put a new wrap on the monorail.
Yeah.
So they do things. And so anyway, May 16th is our guess, but you can definitely plan that through the summer months at some point, you'll definitely be experiencing that 70th anniversary.
And they will have all of those things happening. Like
the whole
you don't
summer.
have to feel like I have to be there for the first week. It's going to be going on all summer. All those things are going to be offered. So, but just something to think about if you're thinking, is this the summer we want to plan a trip? Maybe it's a really great summer to do it.
Yeah.
So, that's coming.
Yeah. So 70th, like last year they did Pixar Fest around that time. They dropped that like right at the end of April and it ran through August. So it'll probably be a similar thing. The 70th or the anniversary celebrations tend to run sometimes even like a year long. So you could see pieces of that even through Halloween and Christmas and into 2026. But the bulk of it will likely happen in the summer months this coming summer. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So June, grad nights, 70th likely, and also you do have a few Pride nights. They haven't announced dates for this yet, but it's usually only 2 or 3 nights through June.
In June, it's usually like like in the Tuesday teens and Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, like midweek, couple of days. Again, maybe it won't affect your trip that much, but maybe you want to plan around that to go or to avoid it, depending on which you prefer. If you're wanting to avoid the crowd of the Pride night, or if you want to participate in Pride night. And if you find that you have booked a trip over that, it may be the time to consider hoppers once again, because that is a Disneyland event. So you will be kicked out of Disneyland once that starts. Usually early-ish. Like it's kind of one of those
it's like 7 or 8 maybe,
where you get kicked out kind of early and you you're just kind of done for the night if you don't have a hopper.
Yep. So something to consider. And as you're booking, if you've already booked that, just keep an eye out. And if you're thinking of booking around that, we're again happy to help you make those decisions and counsel you on what we would do as it gets a little closer. So.
Also, as far as June in the weather department, I feel like it is the best summer month weather-wise. You'll have some hot days, but it still cools down a little bit better at night. And I feel like not never, but the sweltering, like muggy heat doesn't really, June's still kind of like
spring.
It can even be it's kind of springy. It can still have, you can still like totally overcast days sometimes.
Chilly
like,
nights.
June is still like spring in California. It's not really full blown summer. Yeah. Because summer tends to go into more like September where like, so June is kind of, if you're thinking, oh, summer, hot, crowds, June's actually not too bad.
Well, a lot of people haven't planned a trip immediately as their kids are getting out of school. They're just getting into the swing of summer, and they tend to plan their summer vacations for either like toward the end of summer, like into early August, or they want to go over the 4th, or they want to go like, I feel like people don't necessarily choose June as like Disneyland month. It doesn't feel as crowded to me overall.
For sure.
So
some people don't even get out of school till like June 15th.
Yeah.
So
I mean, here we get out like before Labor Day.
I know.
Not Labor Day.
When we lived
Memorial
in Oregon, Day. It was always like June 10th or later. Yeah.
Well, and when we were kids, I feel like we never got out before June, maybe like 4th. And our kids get out literally on like the 23rd
like
of May.
Before Memorial Day.
Yeah, like it's kind of depressing actually. So anyway.
Hey, let's talk about July.
Let's do it.
July is like peak summer. Yeah. Wouldn't you say? The first week of July is always like 4th of July, everything, which is really fun because they've got all like the 4th of July bunting up everywhere. And the snacks are always like red, white, and blue and things like that. So it's actually really fun. And on the 4th of July, they do a special fireworks.
Which we've actually never seen. We've never been there on the 4th. And I think that would be fun, actually.
They do like special like flag retreat ceremonies and different things like that. So being there over the 4th of July is actually really, really fun. One
thing to consider is that it is a little bit of a locals weekend, I feel like, too. Like, I think a lot of people are like, let's go to Disneyland for the 4th of July fireworks instead of going to their normal, like, city fireworks or whatever. So I do feel like it tends to be one where there are crowds.
It's definitely one to plan ahead, especially, like, even on your hotel and stuff like that, because that sort of stuff can get booked out.
And it'll be a little bit of a pricier weekend just because it's a holiday. I mean, we've already seen that when we've been pricing people out even months in advance, that weekend you're going to pay just a hair more, but
a little bit,
not that much more. You know, if it's something that sounds fun, definitely isn't a make or break to not go then. I mean, I would just do it.
But as far as the rest of July, you've got, I mean, it's going to be hot, which again, you can stay cool. You wear shorts, you wear tank tops, you wear athletic wear, you bring electric neck fans, you know where the air conditioning is, you know,
water bottles,
you have a dining reservation in the middle of the afternoon.
You swim at your hotel.
Yeah. So it's just a different trip. This is where we actually would encourage you to be picking a hotel too that has like a fun water park, like the Courtyard theme park or the Howard Johnson or the Cambria, or stay on property at one of the on property. This is a good time to take advantage of the value of an on property hotel because their pools are so fun.
For sure.
So it's maybe a time to splurge on the on property situation a little bit more because you're taking advantage of all of that in the middle of the day.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip.
So something to think about there.
Also, July, the Disneyland birthday happens every year. Every year, the celebration is a little different. It's never huge. It's like they'll usually do kind of a special sort of like noonish. You know how they'll have like the noon in front of the castle character and Disneyland band type things. That's usually a little bit elevated on the Disneyland birthday. They have the characters maybe in more
their birthday outfits,
party outfits, and it's just a little bit more pomp and circumstance surrounding that particular part of the day. But generally speaking, it's a normal day in the parks. I feel like a lot of people like to come and sort of celebrate.
There's a chance, though, this year may be bigger because it's the 70th. They may have a bigger celebration this year on the 17th specifically because it's the 70th. So maybe a fun year to go if you're thinking about that. That's the 17th. But then the rest of July is pretty much just like normal summer trip, you know? So it's a great time to go. We like July.
And really the same goes for early August. And especially as kids start heading back into school, especially local, you'll start to see lower crowds. You start kind of prepping for Halloween in those like mid-August weeks. So you may start to see a little bit of Halloween decor go up. But in general, I feel like I've taken my kids that week right before we go back to school. That's like the 10th through the 14th or something. And we felt like it was, the weather was great. The crowds were low. We had a great time. Yeah. So I feel like that, and it was easy to find a hotel. I feel like it's because so many people are going back to school that week. Most people aren't like, let's take a trip.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you
can be one of the crazy people who wants to vacation the week before school starts, then do it.
You're looking at it. But I feel like the rates for the hotel were reasonable and so definitely a good week if you're kind of wanting to, close the summer out with a bang.
Should we talk about our favorite time of the year?
Let's do it.
Halloween at Disneyland. So typically, Halloween hasn't started before September 1st until this year. This year, it started August 23rd, which is like a whole week before it typically starts.
And it was already a long season.
It's a long season already because it's a full 2 months. But, we don't have dates yet. But again, you can probably plan. I would think that they would take advantage of that last week of August being Halloween instead of
nothing.
Because actually it used to be that the last week of August was a really great time, like super low crowds because kids were back in school and people were waiting for Halloween. But now they've jumped the gun a little. I'm sure that last week in August was really successful for them this year. So I would assume that will probably happen again. But Halloween starts end of August through October 31st. You'll have all of Halloween. I love Halloween. All of the decor. Like Disney really goes all out with Halloween decor. Everywhere you go in Disneyland, there's Halloween decor. Same with DCA. Disneyland is all like orange and yellow and classic pumpkin Halloween, and DCA is more like villainy purples and greens and Oogie Boogie and all like
bats everywhere.
Both of them are like their own vibe and I love them.
Yep. And none of it is scary. No. This is, I think, part of the reason I love Disney Halloween is because it reminds me of like our childhood Halloween before everything got kind of like creepy and gruesome. Like I feel like 1990s Halloween was like the epitome of just like wholesome Halloween. Like picture like a Halloween Town or Hocus Pocus or, all those kinds of things. It's just like, it feels spooky, nostalgic, fun, and not the least bit creepy.
It's not Halloween Horror Nights.
No.
It's not. It's very family friendly at all times of day, all the time, even during Oogie Boogie Bash, which is a whole nother thing, which is fun. Those tickets usually go on sale in like June or July. They are an individual ticket on top of your park entrance, but Oogie Boogie Bash is so fun. If you've never done that before, it's definitely something to experience.
And I actually hear that they're mixing things up this year. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
They've been sending out surveys and stuff to people, sort of asking them about what things they might like to see different about Oogie Boogie. And it makes sense. They've had the same Oogie Boogie program, so to speak, since 2018 when it first rolled out.
Same characters and things like that. I mean, they always bring in some new villains, but
Yeah, but I heard they're mixing up. They may have like different shows happening. They might try to do a World of Color again, which they had done the first year and then didn't do it after that. And so I've heard rumors of things like that. So it's definitely a great time to go. If you have been for Oogie Boogie, it sounds like this year may be switching things up just a hair.
This is a really good time of year, actually, now or January, in the beginning of this year to start planning your Halloween trip. Because Halloween, again, it's one of those that like books up really fast. Yeah. People are willing to plan it out like 6, 7, 8, 9 months in advance. And so the sooner you can get your hotel in, and all that. They don't usually run like ticket deals at Halloween, but if they do, we can always like adjust your price. Like you're never like penalized for booking early at Halloween. It's only going to get more expensive.
Yep.
So the sooner you can put like your $200 deposit down on your room and your tickets and start kind of planning around if you want to do Oogie Boogie or anything like that. Like it's a really good time to start thinking about that. So if you want to be pricing out a 2025 Halloween trip, we're happy to help you with that.
Well, the thing is, if you suddenly change your mind, like let's say you're like 80% sure that Halloween's happening for you this year, just book it, because you can always get that money back. Like everything is refundable until it's all due 30 days before. So if you are like, I'm pretty sure this is happening, put your $200 down. Let's find you a great hotel. Let's get your tickets secured and everything. And then if it gets to be June or July and either the money's not coming together or you've made other plans or it's just not going to work, just cancel or move it to Christmas or to next spring or whatever. We can always make those adjustments. It's a lot harder to make a hotel room where it doesn't exist than to secure you a hotel room that you forfeit later. So that's just something to think about during especially that Halloween season, because it definitely is the fastest. It books up faster than Christmas, faster than anything.
Yes, it absolutely does. So one last thing about the Halloween season is because there's the Oogie Boogie Bash situation, DCA closes to the public at 6:00,
right?
Which is really, really early for like a Halloween party. It's great for those that are going to the Halloween party, but if you are only planning to be in DCA that day and it's done at 6:00 and you didn't arrive till 10, like you feel kind of like,
and you paid for one single park day that is like 6 hours long, 8 hours long.
It's just a lot. So Halloween is the one, like, we're usually pretty open to telling people, you got to do what you got to do. We understand hoppers are an extra expense, all those sorts of things. Halloween is the time I would say do not skimp on the park hopping option because Oogie Boogie is usually typically Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays throughout the whole season. So any trip you're doing, you're going to be there on an Oogie Boogie Bash day unless you're going for like one day.
Or unless you're actually going to Oogie Boogie and that's the only day that you're...
But if you're like wanting to be in the park, a park hopper is really important. So make sure that you're planning on that because that's important.
Yeah, we would highly recommend that to anyone. It really will just make such a big difference in your trip because, like Britton said, if you get into the park, even if you rope drop, people start mixing in around 3 p.m. And from there, your DCA day is just kind of a wash if you're just there for the park. The mornings and the benefit is actually the mornings are dead. So like if you have a hopper, you can start in DCA and enjoy those low crowd mornings.
Because people that don't have a hopper know better and they're
start
in
Disneyland and Disneyland's crowded all day. Yeah. So if you're a smart person, you get a hopper, you stay in DCA from the morning up until it starts to pick up as people start kind of mixing in, and then you go take a break at your hotel and then you head into Disneyland for the night and you've gotten actually a really great value out of your day. Getting hoppers is typically around $90 extra per person now for your whole ticket.
Yeah.
So like if you have a 5-day ticket, spread that $90 over 5 days, divide it by 5, and that's how much it's costing you per day to have that additional freedom. And that helps you generally, not just for Oogie Boogie. It makes it so you can make reservations in either park without being worried that you're not in that park and don't have access that day. You can walk through, if you're staying at one of the hotels over along Catella, like Stovall's or the Westin or any of those places like that, Pixar Place, like you can exit through DCA and that makes a big difference in the amount of walking you're doing. So there's other value beyond just the Oogie Boogie thing, but that primarily is important during that window of time. So I would not go to Disneyland without it during Halloween. I would choose a shorter trip with hoppers than a longer trip with single park per day with Oogie Boogie messing up your schedule. That's how I feel.
I think the last thing to mention about that season is it's hot. This is like probably the hottest season, more than even like July and August. September is like, can be really, really sweltering. If you are planning Oogie Boogie, you don't plan a big like sweatery zip up heavy costume, lightweight summer costume. This is not the time. This is not winter in Utah Halloween.
I just always think of like
your coat underneath
Sully, like people wearing like Sully onesies. Yes. That's just like, it's never going to be a yes for me.
It's just too hot. So planning that it's warm season. So keep that in mind for September, October. Starts to cool down toward the end of October. It's not quite so bad,
and what's weird about it is even though it can be really hot, I've also miscalculated and not brought warm enough clothes for like stroller kids at night. Because I'm like, it's so hot that time of year. We're always dying of heat. But then maybe there's a colder evening and I end up bringing my kid in his like footy pajamas into the park that night because I don't have warm enough clothes with. So you do still have to kind of realize there's something about California. especially if you're from somewhere that's not humid like we are here in Utah. The nighttime weather, even, I mean,
Really all year.
sometimes it's really hot all night long. But generally speaking, the minute the sun goes down, you go from sweltering to actually feeling chilly. So just keep that in mind. And that goes for all times of year. Like she said, it's just like that. So layers.
That's Halloween season, August, September, October. Getting into November. The first week of November is actually a really good low crowd time. If you don't care about the season necessarily, that there's decorations happening, they start to decorate for Christmas a little. You'll see some like holiday swag going up and things like that. But the Christmas tree is not typically going to be happening till like right before Christmas starts. But it's a really good low crowd time with pretty decent weather and all of that. So it's a if you're looking for kind of a lower budget, low crowd time and you don't care about the seasonal offerings, that's a good time to go.
Yeah, well, when we went actually this year, usually we come on Christmas opening day and stay through that weekend. But this year, because of our schedule, we actually went a day quicker than Christmas break. And it was like
maybe
pretty dead. Like
the lowest crowd day we've been to like in a long time.
Yeah, like rides.
The day before Christmas.
Wait times. We kept looking at the wait times. We're like, everything's like 10 minutes. You know, like we didn't get lightning lane that day. No. We just walked on basically whatever we wanted.
But yeah, actually, because it was the day before, everything was up.
Yeah, the tree was up.
The tree was up. I mean, it was basically Christmas.
You just couldn't have the snacks. That's pretty much the only thing that doesn't fully open. Yeah, I know, because we were like, one of our eating days is fully just not available to us.
Right. But yeah, Christmas.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Christmas. So Christmas, typically, it actually started a little late this year. It usually happens like around Veterans Day weekend, wherever that falls. This year, it didn't actually start till the 15th.
It's usually more like the 11th or 12th.
Yeah.
And this way it was like,
like the following Friday from when it's kind of been. So, but generally speaking, you can plan, but by mid-November, at least, it's fully Christmas. And that's Christmas season runs, as we mentioned before, through the first week of January. So it's a great time to go. Unlike Disney World, where they have like Mickey's Christmas parties and stuff like that, messing up your Magic Kingdom days, and special offerings like Christmas parade is only during that Christmas party at Disney World. Disneyland has all the Christmas offerings all the time, every night, to all the people. It's a free-for-all.
And it's in Disneyland and DCA. DCA has their Festival of the Holidays, which is their seasonal celebration of all holidays. They have, Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, and they have entertainment and food, and like it's very much a celebration of the season,
culture, like Christmas cultures.
Yeah, more than like typical, just like Santa Christmas, So that they have food booths, they have coloring, and and entertainment,
lots
everywhere,
of live music. Yeah,
so it's very, very fun over there. And Disneyland is way more just like classic Christmas, Santa, Christmas trees, all that. The snow every night. Guys, if you haven't experienced Disneyland snow, just like you need to.
Try it. You might like it.
But it's weird. We were talking about what weeks are the best weeks to go at Christmas, because there's definitely like busier weeks and less busier weeks. And actually, it's pretty much every other week through the Christmas season. So like
you have these like ebbs and flows.
The first week is going to be busy because it's opening week, but the next week's usually not bad. But then the next week's Thanksgiving usually, and that week's busy. But the week after Thanksgiving isn't bad. The next week is Candlelight Processional at Disneyland, which is busy. The week after
it's a little dead. Yeah.
The week after that is
starts
like
to pick up. Yep.
So it's like so this is where we can really help you if you're like, I want Christmas, I don't want crowds, or I want Candlelight Processional, I want, like all whatever the pieces are, we can help you figure out which part of Christmas is important, because there's so many things that affect it, where you're like, if you would have gone literally 2 days later, you could have had a way more chill trip, or if you would have gone 2 days sooner, you could have experienced some special offering that you didn't.
Well, and likewise, the cost fluctuates a little bit. Like we were both pricing out trips today, and I was pricing out like December 11th through the 15th or something, and she was pricing out like September 7th through the 11th, or vice versa.
It was like the few days
literally
before
like
and she was doing the trip literally the next trip.
And it was like hundreds of dollars different. And so if you really don't care and it's all about budget for you, and you'll take a little bit higher crowds, or you'll take missing the candlelight processional or whatever to have X, Y, or Z. Again, this is a good reason for us to help you, because there's minute differences that can make a big difference for your budget or your experience, whichever is more important to you.
But I mean, we've said this a lot, but I feel like Halloween is more fun and kind of a party vibe, and spooky and magical and whatever. But Christmas is way more like magical, like Christmas, like classic snow and the music and the Santa and all of that. So just depending on what type of trip you feel like sounds more fun, if you're like party vibe or like magical vibe, that may help you decide which one.
Yeah. Well, and like, I feel like I really like Halloween with my family, and I really like Christmas as like a couple's trip, for instance, because it does have a little bit more of like a romantic, magical, quiet. It's a little chillier. You're in your sweaters, and Halloween is, like you said, more like
it's a party.
Everywhere you go, it's just, you're just bopping along, So
and I've gone with my kids at both. And and my kids tend to lean back to Halloween, but they really loved their Christmas trip. They really felt they were way more into like they loved the Christmas parade way more. Like, I didn't think that the
Christmas parade is amazing,
because
I love it too.
They are typically like ride kids, but they were like, when we went out this last summer, they're like, is there a parade? And I'm like, I didn't even know that you cared, but they saw the Christmas one and loved it. And so I was like, yes, it's Magic Happens.
It's the best parade of all time. I know. I actually was going through some old content the other night, and I ran across me videoing my youngest, who was 5 at the time, had just turned 5 last year when we went for Christmas, and we're watching the parade, and he waved through the entire parade at every single person that went by. It was the cutest video. He's like over there, like, just waiting for them to look at him. And he is not a guy that's into parades. Like, I've never seen him care for 1 second.
He's not a hold still kind of kid.
No, but this was like, there was something about it. It was like he wanted every reindeer to see him, and every, gingerbread man, and every dancer, and Santa Claus himself to, just pour down his blessings upon him. He was all there for that. So anyway, it really is. It puts you in a mood, and it's something that isn't really even tangible. It is sort of, it's a crowd mentality thing. Everyone's just so cheerful and cozy.
When we got lucky, we actually ended up with spots like up on the porch on Main Street. Like we kind of like snuck our kids up and just right there on the stairs. And my little girl sat there with her like little legs crossed like this and got to sit and watch the parade, where a lot of times you have to stand and stuff, and just like sat and watched the magic go by.
You can't
like, I was
replicate
watching
that either.
her most of the parade.
Me too. That's how I was saying about this, like videoing him watching. So
again,
yeah,
I don't know. We just really want to help, like we've always said, to help you have the best Disney trip that you can have. Whether it's, we don't want anyone to ever go away feeling like they weren't able to navigate the crowds, or it was so expensive and they came away broke,
or some event that was happening took them off guard. I feel like this is something that happens a lot in the groups, is people will go and come back and be frustrated because they didn't realize that candlelight processional was going to be happening, and that every time they wanted to get in and out of the parks, it was next to impossible, or that they it's good to be informed, because you can make a decision about what parts are important to you, or at least be like, sort of have a little informed consent that that's what you're doing with your week. Because I feel like being able to anticipate it, even if it's less fun, like for instance, we're going to Disney World with our kids for Christmas. I am fully aware it's going to be a logistical nightmare, because there's going to be so many people everywhere we go. And I'm just trying to remind myself that like, that's going at Christmas. That's what it is. That's what it's like. And we'll still be able to have a good time. But I think if you go with this mindset that you're expecting a certain thing, whether it's that the weather will be a certain way, or that a show will be available that's not, or whatever, that disappointment, not being able to rein that in the moment and prepare your kids or your family or your expectations, really messes with your attitude. And so that's why us going through this feels important to us today, because as we're going over our next episode, which is going to be more about your budget and figuring out when
actual
you
numbers.
Want to go, you've got to be able to consent to why it's costing more or less and whether or not that's making a difference for the decisions that you're making. So that's just how I always feel. And I always feel so bad when people come home from Disneyland or Disney World and they're like, we hated it. We had a miserable trip. Everything sucked. Because I can't imagine
Every time
a trip
somebody
like
says
that.
I'm like, I think you did it wrong.
What did you do? Because for real, because even our first trip that we went on where we've said we always say the reason that we do this is because we came home from our first trips and said we could have done that so much better if we had known. And I still stand by that. I want people to definitely be more prepared than that. But I also think people need to put in a certain amount of work in order to understand what they're getting into, whether that's how to use lightning lanes or what they need to buying the hoppers during Oogie Boogie or whatever. Because it would suck to show up at the parks at 10 a.m. and have all the rides be 50-minute waits and also have to leave by 4 when people start crowding you in DCA. That would be a sucky day in Disneyland.
Yeah.
So
I think we've actually pretty much on a lot of our trips recently at various points of the day been said to each other, I can see why people wouldn't like their trip right now.
Yeah.
Like if this was what their trip was, I can see this being not fun. Whether it's we're in some crazy crowd that we know how to now avoid or go around or not be there at that time of day, or people are getting in line for Pirates of the Caribbean with a 65 minutes wait in the sunshine. It's like, you're ruining your trip right now. Like, come back when it says 20, because it will say 20. You know, like there's things where I can see where it's usually just not necessarily being informed and not being willing to pivot and that, well, this is our next ride in the circle of rides we're doing. Like there needs to be pivoting, there needs to be adjusting, and understanding. And you can have such a good trip if you can just have some of these tools, and we really want to give you those things as much as possible, which is why every time we book trips for people, we are here for the hand holding. We're here to answer the questions. We're here to be like, oh wait, no, let's actually have you go this week instead of this week. Or and so we love that we can offer our services completely free, because like we've said, and if you don't know this, you need to know this about travel agents, that if you go and book your trip on the Disneyland website versus us, it's going to be the same price, because Disneyland already charges a travel agent fee. If you do it on the Disneyland website, Disneyland just keeps it. Where if we book it for you, they then pay us a commission for bringing you to them. But you also get all of our help with your payments and making sure that you have things scheduled and helping you if you have questions about your reservations, or your
giving you advice on which hotel to stay at and what time of year to go and how to use lightning lane. And
so we understand the whole what's the catch there. When we say there's literally no catch, there's literally no catch. There is no extra cost to have us help you book. There's no extra expense, and actually a lot of times we can help you save money because a deal comes up on your hotel that applies for while you're there, and we get to apply that for you and save that money, because you're not necessarily monitoring your price day by day with your hotel like we are. So we saved a family $500 the other day when the Disneyland hotel prices came in. They were going to stay at the Disneyland hotel, and the new Disneyland hotel price for the same dates was $500 cheaper, and then we just fixed it for them. So we really are here to help, and we really want this to be the best for you. And why we're spending an hour explaining the whole year to you is because we want you to find the right time of year to go and really have the best trip possible. Yeah. Well, and we've said this before too in other podcasts and reels and whatever, is that every family's situation is so different. Whether that's their financial situation, whether it's the makeup of their family, whether it's that they have special needs, whether it's that they have elderly people traveling with them, or families with multiple ages of children. There's so many things that can affect your trip that actually even just hit my mic. Sorry. Even for seasoned Disneyland goers like us, sometimes things can feel really complicated. Sometimes we were just pricing out last week, what would it cost if we wanted to go with our siblings and our parents and our extended family, on a group vacation. And there's so many nuanced pieces to that of well, these people have a baby and will need to be able to go back for breaks. And these people, these are older people that maybe can't walk as far, and these are whatever. And all those parts create such this working, living organism that if you have also on top of that no context for what you're even talking about, where you're going and how far it is, and all those things, that you get there with your
tens of thousands of dollars spent on your giant group trip with all these people, and they're all looking to you to tell them where you're going first, and you don't have the first clue because you just have never been there, or it's been years, or you've never dealt with these particular situations, rider swapping or renting a stroller or whatever. And that's why we're trying to bring all these pieces together for you
in bite-sized
increments. So that you can customize your own family's needs and create the kind of trip that makes the most sense for you. And that's why going over each of those things and saying maybe weather's important, maybe crowds are important, maybe having access to every ride is important, maybe entertainment's important. And whichever thing that is, you need to be able to know when you have access to that and when it's a non-starter for you.
Yep.
Because that's the only way to narrow it down. And it's the only way to have a good trip. And if not, like Britton said, we're going to stand there and say, we can see why you didn't have a good trip. Because that sounds awful. Well, it can be awful.
And honestly, usually it's when we see a 1-year-old in an umbrella stroller and a 3-year-old walking next to it.
This happened the other day when we were there in security. We're like,
they're going to have a really hard day.
I know. And there was nothing we could do about it, obviously. But
just because you think, oh, well, my 3 or 4-year-old hasn't been in a stroller in 2 years. They don't need a stroller.
And he's at security crying because he's walked a mile from the hotel already and it's 9 a.m.
Yeah.
So, anyway, let us help
those
you.
Pieces. Yeah. So we're here for you. We're here to help you book. If you have any questions about any of these festivals or events or anything like that, we are here for you. And if you are interested in trying to actually price out a trip, figure out how much it actually costs for you to go to Disneyland, it may be less than you think. Mm-hmm. So I think you should maybe follow along to the next episode and talk with us about budget, because we really want to help you get a trip booked in 2025, because we think that'd be really great for you.
Let's do it. Okay, see you in the next episode. Make sure you hit it next.